Hello, and for this video we're going to be using the tutorial platform game that we've been using our class recently. May not be what we're using at the time you're watching this video, but for the case of this video it'll serve its purposes. It's a basic platforming tutorial that has movement, jumping, collecting coins, an enemy, and so forth. You can see down the bottom here I have a link to the original game if you're interested. But basically the point of this video today is to look at how to change between different scenes, and specifically to use this to possibly create a menu system. So we'll create a very simple button type situation that we can use to go from a menu screen into our game. So there's a few things we're going to need to do for this, and I will also start out by saying this is by no means an in-depth tutorial. It will not go into all the different facets that you might need to. It's really just going to focus on the most basic, clicking a button and moving to a new screen, or a new scene, sorry. So first thing to do is go into our game, and we're going to need a new scene, and this scene is going to be what we'll use for our menu. Now this is going to be the first thing that loads when the game runs, so it's like our menu screen that we can then choose to play the game, and we might add other options down the track for things like instructions, credits, an exit from the game, etc., maybe to some configuration options and all those sorts of things. But for now we need another scene. So everything we've been doing so far has really been part of main scene, that's the game itself, and within that we do have other scenes being the player, the enemy, and so forth, but they're all sort of bunched in this main scene. But we'll start a new one, so we're going to go scene, new scene, or whichever method you prefer, and I'll just do a basic 2D scene here. I will rename this scene to be menu. You could of course call it whatever you like, and that's going to become our first scene. So for that to work, we need to change one of our project settings. So in our project menu up the top, in project settings, in the application run component, we need to change the scene that gets loaded at the start. So at the moment this is main scene, so we'll change that to be menu. Now I can't do that of course because I haven't saved that scene. So let's go back for a second, sorry about that. And let's just make sure we have saved this scene, and we'll leave it as menu. If you have a directory structure to keep your scenes and scripts etc. organized, you should obviously follow that. So I'm going to put it inside my scenes folder and save it there. And now I can go to project settings, run, and I should be able to go in and change it to be the menu scene. So now when I press run on my game, it will load my menu scene as the first scene, and it has, and currently it's just a grey box not doing anything. So what I need to do now is add some method to allow me to move to my main scene. So I'm going to add a new child node to this scene, and it's just going to be a button. Now there are lots of different types of buttons. I'm not going through all these today. I'm just going to take the most basic idea of a button, and if I just move down into my working areas, this is the screen part that we'd see of course. I'm going to take that button, just move it roughly into the middle. I'm just going to make it a little bit larger just by dragging with the little handles there. Again, I'm not going into the details of a button itself. You can have a look at buttons either through the help, some Google searching, YouTube, etc. What I will just quickly do in the properties, I will just put the word play game in there. Okay, so this is going to be the button I press. So again, if that is saved and I run that, I will now see there's my button. It has very basic button functionality, so moving over it, it changes to highlight, and of course I can click it, but right now it is doing nothing. So the next thing I need to do is take my button I've just made, go to its nodes and its signals, and I need to do something when it is pressed. So I basically need to connect the pressed signal for this button. Now before I can do that, I do need a script somewhere in the scene. So I'm just going to attach a script to the main menu section there. Again, make sure you follow whatever naming or location guide you've got. In my case, I do have a scripts folder. I'll still call it menu.gd, but I'm keeping it in my scripts folder there. So now I have a basic script attached, and I can close that just for the moment, because what I want to do is, whoops, I didn't mean to close that completely, menu, and I'll go back to 2D. Now when I go to add my pressed signal in, so I try to link that, I can link it in via the menu script. I'll leave it as on button pressed is fine. And there we go. I now have a signal connected to this function, which means we can do something when we press that button. Now what it is we want to do when we press that button is simply move ourselves to a new scene. And our scene in this case is going to be our game scene at the moment, which we've currently got called main scene, if you've been following the same tutorial. Now again, there are several ways you can do this with variables, with packed scenes, and all these are valid. There are ways you can do it in a semi-automated way, but this is the most basic way that I know at least to move to a new scene. So we're going to start with a function called getTree. Okay, so we're going to be getting something from the tree. The tree, of course, is our tree of assets and everything that we have on the side there. All right, it's going to then call the change scene function. Okay, and inside that function, we need the path to our scene. So you can see when I started typing this, it's showing me paths to all the scenes. So I could choose it from here. Okay, so I want to go to the main scene, so I could just choose it from that list. All right, I could type it in, of course, or the other way I could get it is, if I just take it out for a minute, find the scene over in my my structure, my file structure over here. So it's that main scene there, and I can just drag it in as well, and that will give me the path to that scene. It's from the resources underneath the scenes folder we can see here, and then it's in there called main scene. So that is the text path to that scene. So with that having been done, we can run our game again. And if I now click on that play game, we have moved to our scene. So of course that could have gone anywhere, could have gone to another scene that was where we set up instructions, or it could be where we've changed some menu options and so forth. But that is the most basic way of moving between a scene. Now I might just do one more of those, and what I'll do now is, instead of when my player dies, it just restarts that level. In this case, I'm going to change it to go back to the menu. Again, might not be the best way to do this. Probably, I hope you'll implement some sort of health or lives, or at least a you died type screen. But for now, to practice this skill, let's just make it go back to the menu. So in this case, I'm going to go to my player scene, and I know that in here, down the bottom, I have a die function, and at the moment, it's also using the getTree function, but it's choosing to reload the current screen, so basically restarting that scene instead. And I'll just comment this one out for the moment. I will again use a similar command. I will do getTree, right, dot change underscore scene, and again when I start opening the bracket, it's going to give me all the scenes I have, and I'm going to go back to the menu. But again, I could have grabbed menu and dragged it in, or just typed it out if I knew the path. So now what should happen, we'll just quickly save again. When I run this, I start with my menu, I can press play game, and now I can play my game for a bit. But of course, when I die, I'm now going back to the start screen, and I can choose to play again. So that is a very, very basic introduction to moving between scenes. I do encourage you, as always, to investigate other options. There are ways you can make it much fancier with sort of transitions and so forth. You can set up, as I said, variables, packed scenes, and ways to manage your scenes more efficiently. But at the very least, this will let you change scenes from one to the other. Now, before I end this video off, I will just point out there's something very important in the case of games here, especially, and that is that when you change from one scene to another scene, values and variables don't go with them. They're not persistent. And an example that would be here in my score. If I was to collect some diamonds in this case and get a score, and then I transferred to, say, level 2, that score would not go with me. Now, there is a way, of course, to do that, and we do that through what Godot, and in some other languages we call singletons, which some people might know as global variables. So a way to set up values that will stay across multiple scenes and therefore can be used. And that's not something I'm going to go into in this video. It is something you can investigate yourself, or I do intend to make another shortish video on how that works in the near future. Okay, so this one was really focused on the idea of transferring between scenes, not necessarily all the consequences that are there, but just wanted to point that one out for you. And you could try that for yourself. Make a level 2 and see what happens when you transfer across. You'll see that in this case the score will go back to 0 or whatever default value you have set. I'm going to leave this video here. Hopefully that was helpful in some way for you. Good luck with whatever game development you're doing. And if you are in my classes at my school, feel free, of course, to get in contact and ask for any help that you might need.